My parents made me walk home from the hospital after giving birth to transport my brother's bowling trophies. They're fragile, Dad said. You've walked before. I hemorrhaged on the sidewalk. They had no idea what was coming next. The contractions had started at 3 a.m., sharp and unforgiving. I'd called my parents immediately. They'd promised to drive me to the hospital when the time came. My husband, Marcus, was deployed overseas, serving his second tour in Afghanistan. We'd video called earlier that day, his face pixelated, but smiling, telling me he wished he could be there. Just hold on, baby, he'd said. My parents will take care of you. But his parents lived across the country and mine were right here. They'd promised. By the time they arrived at my apartment, I was doubled over, clutching my hospital bag. My brother, Dylan, sat in the back seat of their SUV, looking annoyed at being woken up. Hurry, I gasped, breathing through another contraction. They're getting closer. Mom helped me into the car while Dad drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. Dylan has his regional bowling tournament at noon, he said. We'll need to be quick about this, like I was picking up groceries. The next 12 hours blurred together, pain pushing the moment they placed my daughter on my chest. 6 pounds, 3 ounces of perfection. I named her Emma after Marcus's grandmother. I was exhausted, torn, bleeding, but I'd never been happier. She's beautiful, the nurse said, helping me adjust Emma for feeding. Do you have someone picking you up tomorrow? My parents, I said, though something cold settled in my stomach as I said it. They'd left right after Emma was born, citing Dylan's need to prepare mentally for his tournament. They'd stayed just long enough to take one photo, Dylan holding Emma while I lay exhausted in the background, barely visible. The next morning, discharge day, I texted Mom, ready to come home. They say around 10 a.m. can't make it that early. Dylan's tournament first. We'll come after. I sat on the hospital bed, Emma in my arms, watching the clock. 10 a.m. became noon. Noon became 2 p.m. Other mothers left with their families, balloons and flowers filling the hallways. I waited. At 3 p.m., a text. Tournament running long. Dylan made it to semifinals. At 5 p.m. finals now. So exciting. At 6 p.m., the nurse looked at me sympathetically. Honey, we need the room. Is there anyone else you can call? I tried everyone. My best friend was out of town. My mother-in-law was in Seattle. Uber didn't allow rides with newborns without car seats, and I couldn't afford the medical transport van. Finally, at 7 p.m., my parents arrived. But instead of apologizing, they were beaming. Dylan won. Mom announced as if I should celebrate. First place in regionals. We're taking him to nationals next month. Dad jingled his keys impatiently. Ready? We need to get Dylan's trophies home. They're in the car. I stood carefully, my body screaming in protest. The nurse had given me extra pads. I was bleeding heavily, more than normal. Just take it easy, she'd warned. No walking for long distances. The wheelchair ride to the entrance was mandatory, but once we reached the curb, I looked for their SUV. It wasn't there. Where's the car? I asked, Emma bundled against my chest. Oh, Mom said casually, we had to park in the overflow lot. Dylan's trophies are delicate. 4 of them. Can you believe it? We didn't want them sliding around in the trunk, so they're secured in the back seat. The overflow lot was across the street, and down a hill, nearly half a mile. I can't walk that far, I said, panic rising. I just gave birth. I'm bleeding. Don't be so dramatic, Natalie. Dad cut me off. Women have been giving birth for thousands of years. You've walked before. The fresh air will do you good. Can't you bring the car here? And leave Dylan's trophies unattended? They're crystal. Worth more than, well, they're irreplaceable. He was already walking away. We'll meet you at the car. I stood there, holding my 1-day-old daughter, watching my parents walk away. The nurse had gone back inside. The Texas summer heat pressed down on me like a punishment. I had no choice. I started walking. Every step was agony. I felt the blood soaking through the pads, running down my legs. Emma started crying. She needed to eat again. My arms shook holding her. Sweat mixed with tears I refused to let fall. Halfway there, I had to stop. The world spun. I sat on a bus bench. Emma screaming now, my vision going gray at the edges. A woman jogging past stopped. Oh my God, are you okay? She took one look at the blood on my legs and pulled out her phone. I'm calling 911. No, I gasped. Just need to get to the parking lot. My parents, she helped me stand. This stranger showing more kindness than my own family. Honey, you're hemorrhaging. You need help. But I was stubborn. Stupid. Still believing that if I could just make it to the car, everything would be okay. We made it to the overflow lot where my parents sat in their air-conditioned SUV. Dylan in the middle seat surrounded by his trophies, each one carefully buckled in like a passenger. Finally, Dad said when I collapsed into the remaining sliver of back seat. Emma clutched to my chest. Dylan's hungry. We're thinking of stopping at his favorite steakhouse to celebrate. I bled through their leather seats on the way home. They complained about the stain for weeks, but that walk changed everything, because among the witnesses was someone unexpected. Dr. Sarah Chun, head of obstetrics at the hospital, who'd been leaving her shift and saw me struggling across the street. She'd followed at a distance, concerned, and watched the entire scene unfold. She saw my parents sitting in their car. She saw the trophies. She saw the blood. She took photos. The hemorrhaging landed me back in the hospital that night. Marcus's commanding officer granted him emergency leave when he learned what happened. He arrived 48 hours later to find me getting a blood transfusion while his mother, who'd flown in from Seattle, held Emma. "They made you walk?" His voice was deadly quiet. Military quiet. The kind of quiet that preceded storms. I told him everything. The trophies. The celebration dinner they'd gone to while I bled in my apartment. How they'd posted photos on Facebook of Dylan with his awards while I was being rushed back to the hospital. Marcus said nothing for a long moment. Then, my re-enlistment bonus just cleared. "We're done with them." But I had something else in mind. Something that had been percolating since Dr. Chun had visited me that morning with an interesting proposition. "Your parents," she'd said carefully, "they own that sports memorabilia shop downtown, right? The one that sponsors youth bowling leagues." I'd nodded, wondering where this was going. "My husband is a commercial real estate attorney. That whole block just went up for sale. The current tenants have first right of refusal." But, she'd paused. "Well, let's just say the owner is very interested in selling to someone who'd maintain the youth sports focus, someone with a vested interest in the community." My parents' entire identity revolved around that shop. It's where Dylan's trophies were displayed, where they held court with other sports parents, where they'd built their reputation as the ultimate supportive family, as long as you were athletic and male. The next month was a blur of recovery and planning. Marcus' mother stayed to help with Emma while I healed. My parents, meanwhile, seemed to forget I existed. They were too busy preparing for Dylan's nationals, posting countdown updates and fundraising for his travel expenses. They never once asked about Emma, or me, or why their daughter had nearly died. So I didn't tell them when Marcus and I met with Dr. Chen's husband. I didn't tell them when we used his re-enlistment bonus as a down payment. I didn't tell them when the building owner accepted our offer, with the stipulation that current tenants could stay if they met the new rental terms. And I definitely didn't tell them those new rental terms would triple their rent. The letter arrived the week before Dylan's nationals. I know because Mom called me for the first time in 6 weeks, screaming, "How could you do this to us? This is our livelihood." "I'm a landlord now," I said calmly, Emma cooing in my arms. "It's just business. You've been getting below market rent for years. Time to pay fair value. We can't afford triple, then move. I already have 3 other sports shops interested in the space. Ones that actually support all youth athletes, not just the ones related to the owners. But Dylan's trophies are fragile. I know. You might want to start packing them carefully. Moving trucks can be so rough on Crystal." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Dad got on the line. "You're doing this because of that day at the hospital, aren't you? You're still being dramatic about a little walk." "A little walk?" My voice stayed level, but Marcus squeezed my hand. "I hemorrhaged. I needed a blood transfusion. I could have died." "You've walked before," he said. The same dismissive tone from that day. "Yes," I agreed. "I have. And now I'm walking away. From you." They tried everything. Guilt trips. Flying monkeys in the form of relatives. Even Dylan called, whining about how I was ruining his career by distracting our parents during nationals. But the lease terms were ironclad. They had 60 days to accept the new rate or vacate. During those 60 days, I did something else. I reached out to every family they'd dismissed over the years, the ones whose kids weren't athletic enough, whose daughters were overlooked for sons, whose children they deemed unworthy of their precious support. Together, we formed a new youth sports organization. One that valued all kids, not just the stars. One that provided transportation for families who needed it. One that understood sometimes parents were deployed or single or struggling. We called it Emma's League. The irony wasn't lost on anyone when we ended up renting my parents' former shop space after they couldn't afford the new rates. Dylan's trophies, which they'd had to remove from the display cases, ended up in their garage. Last I heard, Mom backed over one while rushing to his bowling practice. The grand opening of Emma's League was on a Saturday. Marcus wore his dress uniform. Emma in a tiny bowling shirt someone had made for her. Dr. Chin cut the ribbon. The place was packed with families who'd found support and community in our program. My parents drove by. I saw their car slow down. Saw them looking at the transformed space. At the photos in the window. Not just of winners,